Hi, this is Ekya.
And this is Revan.
Welcome to the MBA Alumni Ascent podcast series, which is aimed at understanding the lives of alums from top business schools. By that, we mean understanding their upbringing, their pre MBA career, their post MBA career, their career motivations, and their thought process on various different aspects.
Through this, we would like to help our viewers gain an understanding of different career paths. Everyone has their own unique journey, and this podcast is an attempt to bring out some of the stories to help you gain perspective. Hope you like it. We are now present on both YouTube and Spotify. You can subscribe to the podcast through the link in the video description. Do share your feedback, and we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
The following conversation is with Mr. Yaman Arora. Yaman is from Delhi and is currently working with Accenture for over 3.5 years now. He is in a management consulting role at Accenture. He graduated with an MBA from ISB and was a YLP admit. His previous work experience include technology consulting at PwC. He has a bachelor's degree from Delhi Technological University. Here is Yaman Arora.
Hello, Yaman.
Hey,
Hello.
hi.
It's good to have you here, and thank you for taking out the time for the podcast.
No, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Yaman, as we take this conversation ahead, why don't you tell us a little bit about your current role? What are you up to these days?
Sure. So, right now I am working with Accenture in the CFO EV practice, which is essentially the CFO's agenda. So, most of my clients are either CFOs or someone in the CFO's organization. And I usually work on problems like managing the CFO's organization, how they should be run, what sort of work they should be doing, is it being done properly or not. So those part of things, essentially cost managements, allocations, organizations, so on and so forth.
Understood, understood. That's quite interesting. And I'm really curious to know how a day looks like in your life. Like, what are your day to day responsibilities in your current role?
Mhm. So a typical day would involve some work around my ongoing projects, some work around doing contributing to the sales bids, and some smaller part around internal activities like building assets or doing some team engagement activities. That would be a typical day for me. So usually begins with what meetings I had yesterday, what are the follow-ups I need to do, putting out the client stories that I need to manage, what are the actual delivery work that I need to do today. And after that, it's like supporting the senior executives on sales bids, uh, essentially creating a story to for the client to tell them how we can solve your problem that you're facing right now. So usually in that aspect, we receive requests for proposals from our clients that so and so is our problem right now. We're looking for advice or help on this. How can you help us? So hashing out that story, creating those materials that can be used in front of the client, and internally as well, we do some assets like uh, so consulting essentially is having the same problem in a different context in a different industry over and over, right? So essentially making, let's say, things that would help us accelerate any project, creating maybe knowledge repositories or some usable assets or methods of analysis, things like that. So if I have to break it down, assets don't usually happen a lot, but when they do, they are of real importance.
Got it.
I see.
So, Yaman, how is this different from pure play consulting, or maybe is this a part of consulting?
No, this is a part of consulting itself. So consulting is essentially you coming in and solving a problem for the client, which we are doing. Uh, Not really sure how it is different from pure play consulting. Like we go to the clients and we see what sort of problems they have. We request data to understand it better. We conduct interviews and workshops with the clients. We solve what sort of solutions should be there, and then make a few recommendations, implementation plans, roadmaps, and if the client is happy with all of that, we also follow through with a larger implementation program. So it's all part of consulting umbrella.
Sure. So it is consulting, but more on the financial side, given that you are part of CFO's office.
Yes, yes. So I'm not part of CFO's office per se, but the practice that I work in, most of our clients are CFOs or their organizations, one downs, or maybe corporate performance managers, stuff like that. Uh, it's just a way we specialize in. The my practice has been built in. It's not really different from anyone doing a specialized consulting practice. It's like pure play consulting only, if I have to put in that words.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. So, taking this conversation ahead, uh, a lot of people, especially outsiders, are usually keen to know about the work culture at Accenture. So, what are your thoughts on that?
See, before I give my thoughts, I'll put a disclaimer that the answer to this question for every consultant can change with the kind of project they are doing, and usually depends on how the project is sold and what kind of work pressure there is, what kind of managers you're working with. So essentially, in consulting, you never work with the same team twice. Like it's rare to have the same team twice. You might have one or two members, but the thing is, it's usually hectic. It's usually involving 12 to 14-hour work days. But that also comes in cycles. Sometimes there's a downtime, like when the project is just beginning, things are being mobilized, or you have requested for time and data from the client, and you don't have anything to work on immediately. But that aside, the culture at Accenture is actually really good, and I personally feel very nice here. People are warm, they're receptive, they respond to help, requests for help, and there's a pretty open culture. I can walk up to an MD and talk to them very openly about any sort of problems I have or any sort of help I need with their with my projects. They're always ready, and even with my peers and juniors, like the culture is very good, and it's easy to form work friendships here. And the problem with consulting, usually what I see is manufactured emergencies. So essentially, your manager wants something right now, but it's not required right now in essence, but they just want to manage their workload, which is why they spoil your workload. So this kind of a thing is not really prevalent, at least in my practice and the people I've worked with, and makes me really happy about that. Plus, there are ample opportunities to learn. Like you can go out to people and reach out. You want to learn this, learn that. People are always receptive to that. So that's a good plus to have.
Nice, nice. So, Yaman, like somebody just starting out in consulting, how is the handholding process like for someone with no prior experience and somebody who's very new to the consulting practice?
So generally in consulting, what happens is if you're joining, let's say, as a fresher without any experience, and this would vary from organization to organization, but generally what happens is you have to be sold to the project team to take you. Like you are not earning your team revenue, maybe just costing your team in the initial few months, but then you pick up things very quickly in consulting. And since anyway what you need is a structured way of thinking and solving problems and identifying what the path forward should be, rather than being an absolute expert in any one particular area. So, from that knowledge aspect, it's not as difficult for a fresher. Just that you need to be very well versed in how you're thinking and what you're speaking, also articulating your thoughts very well. and that if you are okay with and you can maybe pick up in a few months very soon, uh, you should be sorted. From a project point of view, mostly freshers start in with a project that has a big team pyramid so that they can be helped readily and they can also be covered for in case they are, let's say, lacking on any aspect of delivery, maybe it's speed or quality or methods of analysis. Apart from that, there are a few organizations which also sort of try to smoothen your entry into the industry by putting you on shadow projects. So essentially, you look at people who are working. You are not client facing at that time, but you just are in the project for a to gain a perspective on how things are run. So this is usually how the handholding process runs, and it's actually trial by fire. Like you just thrown into the swimming pool and told to swim, even if you don't know how to swim. That's how the industry is. And this is also usually what excites a lot of people, like being put into very challenging situations and just finding your way out of it.
So, follow up question to that.
Sure.
Uh, how does the career progression look like for someone who's just joined Accenture, right, post his or her MBA?
Okay. So if a fresher is joining post MBA at Accenture, usually they would join at a management consulting analyst position. Uh, Usually typically takes 2 to 3 years to be promoted to a consultant, another 3 or 4 years to be promoted to a manager. So analyst and a consultant, there is not usually very huge difference between the kind of role you have. You are responsible for, let's say, a particular project or a particular work stream, and your major role is delivery. You do not have any other targets, but it's always good to be involved in sales and internal development materials. Once you proceed from a consultant to a manager, your primary roles becomes managing a project plus doing sales. So that is a manager. Then you move on to, let's say, a senior manager who is essentially similar to manager but lesser in terms of project delivery and more in terms of project sales. And after that, there are like directorial positions, varying levels across practice. There can be like senior directors or associate directors, principal directors, like depending on bureaucracy within the team. Ultimately, the part leads to a managing director, which is essentially the partner of the firm. They have skin in the game. They do own a lot of equity, mandatorily, and also by virtue of that share have a share in profits.
Got
And
it.
then
So, what?
at the level, there are different levels like practice leadership, country leadership, regional leadership, that sort of stuff.
Got it. So, how does the timeline look like? Let's say,
Timeline varies a lot. Yeah, so I'll tell you, typically, you would spend anywhere between 2 to 3 years at an analyst level, uh, maybe 2.5 to 4 years at a consultant level on average. At manager level, now things vary because a lot depends on how you're selling and how you're performing and how your practice is also performing. Because at A's and C's, mostly it's an individual contributor role. You will be rewarded or appraised basis your own performance, and the other factors wane much lesser. But managerial and onwards depends on how your practice is doing, how your team is doing. So it's difficult to comment, but on average, I would say maybe 4 years at a manager, and you reach a senior manager, and then it's like anyone's chance from senior manager to MD. Also depends upon what sort of opportunities you are getting, which is not in your control, and what sort of openings there are, what is the outlook for the overall company performance, because promotions to directors and MDs, they are very subjective and also political and strategic. They are not just dependent on your performance. But I've seen people being promoted from SM to MD in like 7 years also, and people have taken like 10 years also. Some people have moved in 3 years also, so you get the gist.
Yeah.
So Yamad, you have been with Accenture for close to 4 years now. I believe you had joined right out of ISB. What made you stick to the company for so long?
हाँ, so मेरे पापा ने बोला मारूंगा अगर छोड़ी तो। किडिंग। यार I was a YLP during ISB and had very little work experience. So I just wanted to like stay at an organization and become like gain a bit of knowledge in one field at least before making a switch to another. Plus, kind of personal, I had never had a promotion pehle. So I just wanted to like have a promotion also and see what the added set of responsibilities are and then sort of move out. And then there were a few things happening in personal life as well for which I thought कि ठीक है यार एक जगह पे रहते हैं अभी let's focus on the other stuff. Plus, I've never had a problem with Accenture. Like, apart from having spent more time here, I really have liked the kind of work we do here. I worked on like different aspects of problems, and I've had good relationships, good mentors. So never really wanted to like switch immediately. But now I feel I'm coming up on the 4 year mark, so maybe time to not complete the 4 year mark.
Understood, understood. So Yaman, I'll just move on to what's happening in the consulting industry right now. So we keep hearing that there has been a decline in number of consulting projects, and that has in fact also led to a decline hiring from top B schools like ISB. What is your personal take on that?
Then definitely there is a decline. So essentially, what happened is post COVID, uh, like during and post COVID, there was a very small decline, but then things expanded very rapidly, and people were hiring like crazy, giving hikes like crazy, and there was a lot of good consulting spend that companies were making. Uh, but after that, I think things have subsided now, and I think for the past a lot of time there has been a lot of volatility in the markets. Even before Trump and especially after Trump, things are not as good, and especially now with the tariffs, costs in US companies are going to rise by a lot. And we see that the US markets usually influence what happens in other markets as well. So the pipeline in consulting have sort of not grown as per expectations. That coupled with already a good number of hirings made and good spend on those hirings being already made has somewhat led to a decline in the appetite for further hirings in consulting firms. That is my take on this. So that apart, there are also new problems the consulting industry is facing right now with Musk and his Doge. I'm sure you would have been seeing Accenture and Deloitte all over the news. So this is a significant hit, and the outlook is not as good, which is sort of maybe forcing leadership to relook at hiring and openings in general.
Got it. So one of the main factors that you pointed out was, the incoming Trump administration, right? But then that happened maybe late 2024 or 2025. But then if you look at the hiring as such, yes, 2022 there was a peak, but then it has not quite recovered post that.
Yeah.
Are there any other issues apart from this macroeconomic factors?
Nahin, so see, there's a general trend in consulting also that people are starting to question the level of value that is being added just by giving strategies. And a general trend for the past 5 7 years, what I feel has been more towards doing a full cycle of projects. So essentially, if you talk about 10 years before, 10 years ago from now, the trend was some strategy firm would come in to just do the strategy or a high level analysis, and then some lower tier firm would come in for management implementation, and then maybe some technology consulting company would come in for a IT implementation, and things would be outsourced and all. Now things are moving towards one providing a more holistic solution, starting right at the strategic level down to the implementation levels. And if you see the firms which usually specialized in strategy, they are moving downwards toward implementation also. They are building practices with expertise in those areas. uh, and they're also like acquiring brands like crazy. That being said, firms which expertise, which have expertise or specialized in implementations and technology, they are also trying to move up the chain towards management and strategy, just to provide a integrated solution, because everyone wants to, if you have a client relationship right now, you just want to get more out of it. And the client also sees more value now in getting a rounded solution, a full integrated view of what is going to happen today and what is going to happen 3 years from now. Because the issue is that, if let's say I tell you do action A, and I tell you it is going to make you X amount of money, I come in, you agree with my calculation and projections, all good. But when someone else comes in and they tell you, okay, we can't achieve X because this was wrong, that was wrong, who do you hold accountable for in that case? But if it's just the same stakeholder coming in and doing the strategization, projection, and then the implementation and savings or growth, whatever it is, then you can hold the person accountable that 1 year ago you told me this, now you're not meeting it. Why is that? So that is a general kind of trend going on around the industry. Another trends, I think this is why the consult like this is how clients have been questioning consultants as well. And definitely markets have been a bit volatile, and which is why the hiring trends that you see in the market, they exist.
Got it. So do you see a change in hiring trends as such? Because like you mentioned, clients are looking for well-rounded solutions, right? Both strategy as well as implementation. Would that mean, let's say, companies like Accenture, uh, going forward, would they be looking for different set of skill sets, when they come to the campus for placements?
No, so Accenture anyway, they hire both for their strategy management consulting arm and their technology consulting arms. Like they have different ways, different practices for which they hire, and they already have a considerable practice in all of those terms. Not sure of how this is going to translate for campus placements for other firms, but in the open markets, I do see non-typical profiles being looked at by other firms.
Okay, got it. And do you see any pickup in number of candidates getting hired in the consulting domain going forward, or you expect this trend to stay put?
No, I think maybe for the next cycle at least, things might not pick up as well. But once things stabilize with the Trump administration as well, and the general outlook on consulting improves, that might help pick up the numbers. But that being said, I think there is a lot of good consulting spend happening in India. There is a lot of traction around Gen AI and GCCs in the consulting world, and all of the firms are trying to capitalize on that. And the thing with technology and GCCs is that India does that good. And for majority of the potential GCCs, the location targets would mostly be India. If not India, a small minority would probably be your Latin America and Southeast Asia. But a good chunk I expect to be in India, and India being right in the action usually translates for a lot of roles in consulting around that sort of practices. And if you see like a lot of consulting firms which specialize in outsourcing and hiring and different sorts of facilities, they are sort of getting traction in the news as well, and they're getting a lot of clients as well, and that is, I think, a good thing, but maybe for a few years only and might not last as long as to support an entire generation of consultants.
Got it. So it's good that you brought up this new point, right? GCCs. So I'm just curious. You know, when you look at the projects or the consulting projects, headquarters versus GCCs, um, is there any difference when it comes to the kind of projects that you do for headquarters, the parent companies versus directly dealing with GCCs? I'm assuming there will be margin pressures and hence that ripple effects on the placements as well, right?
See, what I would say is GCCs are essentially an evolved version of how your business outsourcing used to take place 20 years before from now. Okay, and GCCs right now are being not just looked at as an outsourcing opportunity, rather a second headquarter, I would say. So one of my recent clients that I was involved in, it was a huge project. They are looking to save more than $1 billion by establishing a GCC in India, and they are not looking at it from a paper pushing role being outsourced to India. Rather, they do have a lot of strategic roles here as well, a lot of stakeholder managerial roles as well here, and they do have senior leadership sitting out of India now. Uh, that being said, since this is being looked at as a second headquarters, there's no real difference in terms of what sort of work would I do for a GCC versus what sort of work would I do for a client in the US. But they are essentially the same business and need to solve the same problems. And now it's all about a role being created in the consulting project in the US versus in India. And things for quite some time have been in favor of India. Like we do have a lot of smart people here, and people do recognize the value that we put in. And it's not about, I'm rambling, but it's I don't really see a lot of difference in terms of just GCCs impacting placements on campus,
Sure.
but definitely consulting business is going to get a boost.
Sean.
Sure.
So moving on, Yaman, just let's talk about how salaries are like in consulting. And you may not divulge the exact figures. I mean, I can understand there is confidentiality around it. But how is a typical jump between levels when it comes to consulting? And how is a typical type package that they start with when they join a consulting upfront after a beast?
See, it depends a lot upon what B school you're coming from and what firm you're joining. Like if I have to put it in terms of comparison, I would say your typical MBBs pay a lot more than what would be paid by an A&M or Accenture. And then after that, I would say the big fours would come in the ladder. And somewhere in between all of these would lie your boutique consulting firms. That being said, I think if you are coming from a premium campus like ISB or IMs, your top IMs, ABCs, there's not a lot of difference in terms of people coming from those campuses to any particular firm. Uh, I would say somewhere between an entry level role could lie somewhere between 20 to 30 in terms of your fixed pay and on your progression. So progressions have been uh, a bit muted, and hikes have also been a bit muted for the past few years in consulting industry. But I would say a normal hike these days looks like anywhere between 10 to 15% if you have a hike. And A promotion would again be between 15 to 20-25% maybe. But these are all very directional figures and anecdotal. I like do not have broader figures to quote.
Understood. Fair enough.
All right. So, Yaman, shifting gears, let's talk more about you. Could you maybe talk about your family upbringings, the early stage, right? Your schooling, and your pre-MBA journey.
Sure, sure. So yeah, I'm a Delhi guy all throughout my life. Born and brought up in Delhi. My schooling from here itself. I studied my 11th 12th was PCM plus economics. This is sort of a rare field. At least used to be rare. This combination when we were in school. I completed my 12th in 2014, so this is like 11 years before, and I was actually just like the only guy who was doing PCM plus economics, and I used to switch sections during the day. Uh, then I joined DC, Delhi College of Engineering, now called Delhi Technological University, for my BTech. I am an electronics engineer, and during my BTech, I was very much interested in robotics and digital chip design and all of that stuff. And I also took part in a lot of competitions, even one at IIT Bombay. It was a national level robotics competition. Worked on cutting edge computer vision at that time. But I somehow just figured that this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I found my calling more in business than in technology. So I thought technology, like consulting, would be a good fit for me. uh, I don't know if I agree with my 11-year-old self now or not, but so I moved to PwC after my BTech. I joined as a technology consultant. I At that time there was a wave of digital transformation going on in the consulting industry, and I worked on a few projects with that. Uh, but it was a very brief stint. As I mentioned earlier, I was a YLP at ISB, so I had already had my admit while I was in college. So worked at PwC for just 20 months and joined ISB. It was a particularly difficult journey because as soon as I left my job, we got to know that ISB is delayed due to COVID. So I'm sure you both know what I'm talking about. Uh, I spent a lot of my a considerable part of my MBA sitting in this room. But it was a good journey, and I think we were the beacons of hope at that time. Uh, but yeah, this is a brief about me.
Yeah, sure. So, if you were to go back to your PwC stint, how would you compare your roles, right, while at PwC and then your current role now at Accenture?
So they are considerably different roles, I would say. At PwC, my role was more in technology consulting from the point of view that if you are doing a digital transformation, how should your technology architecture look like? I was into that design and also looking at what sort of data warehouses and reporting tools could you use, what sort of strategic level of insights any top executive would like to have or should have to be able to make effective business decisions. uh, that was a good role, but I think I just wanted to move more away from technology and to more actual business and strategy. uh, in my current role, in contrast, I do have a lot of face time with CFOs and other CXOs. Even I worked with Indian family businesses, legacy businesses, promoters. uh, Now I get to see more how things are done at the top level of leaderships and what sort of priorities do these guys have, and how they make their decisions. Like earlier, I was just as a backend given a role. Ki bhai, this is the sort of information you need to make this sort of a decision. But now I am more in the position to see that if I have this and this information available with me and I have to make a decision, how do I make that? So from that perspective, it's fairly different. I would say I've grown a lot to like this role, but I think there's scope for further growth as well.
Got it. So you getting into consulting domain post MBA, that was a conscious choice.
Yes, yes, yes. I have always wanted to be a consultant, and I just somehow went into engineering, but I always knew like maybe 20 years down the line, I want to start my own business. I didn't know what it would be, but I somehow felt that being in consulting would definitely make me learn how the industry works faster than doing a business. Plus, I am somewhat a risk averse person. I would not have been able to directly start something on my own without being absolutely sure about myself. So, consulting for me, I would say, is a long shot at me being sure of myself.
Got it. Hope your dreams come true, Yaman, because India needs more entrepreneurs, right? We need to create hubs out. एक क्या होगा?
All right, wonderful. So Yaman, you briefly touched upon like somewhere down the line in the future you would want to start something of your own perhaps. And that brings me to the question, what are your future goals like? Or, what really motivates you? And if I were to put it that way, maybe what could give you the ultimate satisfaction if you were able to achieve that in your future?
Sure. So, I would say I am a kind of person who would enjoy autonomy over my day and uh, being able to relax whenever I want to. And ultimately, maybe 20 years down the line, moving out of a tier one city and living somewhere quieter and slower life. So maybe getting into that financial independence, retire early thing, uh, and maybe doing something around villages or agriculture. That has been one of my goals since childhood. Like I always admire people like your normal doodh wala. He comes in the morning and then chills the entire day. So why not do something like that? Earn less but be happy.
Like a simpler life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very difficult to actually like there's a difference between talking about a simple life and actually living one, because then there's a lot of things you miss out on and a lot of comforts you would miss out on. And it's not just your own decision, you also have to think about what your family is and stuff like that. So but let's see how what the future holds.
Of course, I mean, of course, definitely. So Yamat, like going by the trends right now, how is generative AI impacting your day-to-day work? And how do you see tech getting integrated into consulting going forward?
No, so Gen AI is an absolutely lovely thing to work with, and everyone realizes the value that this thing brings on. Like me being a consultant, it helps me as well, and I also see value for my clients with Gen AI. Uh, a very small example would be that. So I'll take a step back without before the example. What you need to learn to be able to use Gen AI is that Gen AI can help you with a lot of information and can solve problems on the time front for you. But you still need to be sure of what you want this tool to do. And once you get the information out of this tool, what to do with that information, that ultimately lies in your own hands. Now, I'll give you an example. I was selling this to a client. What Gen AI, maybe one application of Gen AI is on financial analysis. Like there are huge reports in terms of FP&A function creating maybe some scenario modeling or some sort of forecasting and budgeting. And let's say you being a CFO of an organization want to understand why some division did not meet some of its targets. Now, what you can do is either you can shoot an email to your underlings asking the reasons, or you can dive into the Excel files or your Tableau dashboards or whatever to see what the data is, or you could just write up, put a layer of GenAI over all your financial reporting and give access to the data to this tool and just ask them, why is this target not met? and you will have your answer in seconds. Now, that being said, you will have your answer in seconds, that this is the reason because of which the target was not met. But what does that mean for your business in terms of both within the firm, micro units, and what is going on at a macro level outside of the firm? That is something that you, with your knowledge and experience and wisdom, need to be able to figure out. And what to do next is what essentially is your responsibility at that point of time. But what GenAI does is essentially solve a lot of that time taken to get that insight from the data in a very pointed and executive ready manner. So this is something, like, this is one small example of what consulting firms are doing with GenAI for their clients right now. And I think right now it is as at uh, not a nascent but just post nascent sort of stage. And I think in the coming years, maybe 5 years down the line, this is going to mature into something really wonderful. That being said, sure, a lot of financial analysts jobs might seem to be at risk, but then you at every level need to learn how to leverage Gen AI, because this is going to be something that is going to stay.
So, Yaman, interesting that you brought up this employment part, right, when it comes to Gen AI. So, broadly, if you look at it, generative AI, from what I understand, two major implications. One is on the productivity side of things. What I mean by that is, let's say, decreasing the turnaround time or maybe improving the accuracy. That's one area. The other area is improving the efficiency, right, which is more on the uh, margins protection. Now, if you look at it, you've kind of touched upon both these aspects. Um, Now, from the employment point of view, does that mean that people need to be scared that generative AI is coming after their jobs, or how to kind of circumvent this? Is it through upskilling, or what would you suggest?
See, how I see it, and from what I've seen across industries, is that Gen AI is definitely going to help you, but cannot right now do the job of a human. Uh, there are a lot of issues with Gen AI right now, and you can't 100% blindly trust what it gives you. A very typical example would be a very famous tweet broke up, I think, on the internet last week, with the founder having fired five of his developers and using some chat GPT or some other tool to create all the codes. But then it blew up and he didn't know what to do. And he just couldn't debug it. And he couldn't understand how it performs or whatever it does. Basically, what I mean to say is that it can give you something, but it can't ensure you deriving value out of that thing. You need to be an expert at coding or, let's say, financial analysis to be able to interpret what those results are, use them in the right places. So it is going to definitely save you a lot of time, but then the expertise part is what the human brings in. Now, that is my perspective on this. Definitely it might cut across, let's say, on a macro level, a smaller percentage of jobs, but I don't see a large scale unemployment coming in because of AI. There may be smaller, what do you say, smaller jerks in the graph of employment, but in the medium to long run, I would say things will stabilize and people will just integrate AI into their own systems and learn how to deal with it. But at a very lower level, I would say, like automation or chatbots and stuff, that might definitely be affected. Telecalling, that might be affected. Yeah.
Hmm. But don't you think it's just it's only a matter of time? All these hallucinations will go away, and then you'll get to a when you get to the next version of the model, all these things would be taken care of, especially with agentic architectures kind of coming in. Uh, do you still think uh, you know there wouldn't be any risk, major risk to the employment opportunities?
I'm not very sure. I think we'll have to wait and watch how things go. But I can talk about how I personally trust AI. I trust it to do some bit of research for me, some bit of analysis for me, but I would not 100% trust AI, because if it is my job on the line for what results I am getting, I need to make sure this goes from my hands and eyes, and I can't just blindly paste and copy stuff. And I think that will be the same case for a lot of middle and senior level management in a lot of firms. Like you can't trust $1 billion of investments and revenues and profits onto a simple program, because at the end of the day it's all about responsibility, right? If you are one person being responsible for that particular report, let's say, then it's your job on the line and it's everything for you. But for, let's say, a provider of such a service, ChatGPT, OpenAI, what is it? It's just a very small rounding off error in terms of percentages if you lose revenue from one of your clients, right? So how does it incentivize me to actually invest so many billions of dollars into just improving for a very small incremental change? I mean, that's how I see it. But we'll have to wait and watch, I guess.
Makes sense. Sure.
So moving on, Yaman, like just kind of shifting gears a little bit, you might have encountered many failures in your life, and just want to understand from you, how is your typical attitude to deal with failures when things really don't go the way that you had hoped them to go?
Hmm. This is a very tough question, actually. I would say, see, everyone has their own way to deal with failures, but I would say the first thing is to accept that, okay, I probably did not perform as well on this thing, and I was either making errors, or I was not thinking the right way, or maybe things are out of my hand. There can be a plethora of reasons. So first of all, it's just easier, like it'll be easy if you accept what has happened and try to be calm in that situation, and not give in to anxiety or anger or any emotions like that. Now, it's very easy to say that rather than practice, but from my own experience, I would say stay calm is the first step, and then maybe reach out for help. Like, there's no harm in reaching out for help or rethinking how you're doing things the entire way, or reaching out to people. Essentially, that's the best way to go about it. And communicating to all your stakeholders that, so there is a problem, we made a mess out of it, but this is the way forward. You go in with a way forward. uh, all your problems are, you essentially have a plan to get out of all your problems. So I would say this is my go-to framework to solve any sort of failure.
Got it. Got it. And just to, end things on a good, on an interesting note, if you were to look back at your past, what would you tell your pre-MBA self?
What would I tell my pre-MBA self? Nothing, yaar. I would just say chill karo thoda sa life mein, and things will work out. Don't stress as much. I will just say that, like, I know a lot of people take stress on MBA, kya hoga, placement kya hoga, and all that. I would say just keep calm and keep your head down and keep working. Things will eventually work out. You don't need to worry. You need to think about what is coming next. You need to think about what to do, how to do, but you don't need to worry. There's a difference in between thinking and worrying. So you take out the worrying aspect, your thinking will become much more productive and efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right, Yaman, it's been great having you here today for our podcast, and really nice of you to take out this time. And
Bilkul, yaar. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure being here, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Aman.
take care.
You too. Bye.